Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options and Play video update. So, as we wrap up the second week of earnings, well, I guess it depends which way you look at it, right? Second week of earnings, but really like the first significant week. Last week was kind of quiet until the banks on Friday. Now we've had like our first real taste of some of the bigger names, and that's really only going to increase over the next 2 weeks because this upcoming week is absolutely packed. So in this video, you're going to see just how many big names are coming up, and I tried to go over, I tried to narrow it down to some of the more interesting ones. Outside of this video, there's still like a ton of other names that I didn't even cover. So just absolutely jam-packed week coming up. So ton to look forward to. So let's jump in here. So Monday before the open, Granger, GWW. So this will be the third of the industrial part names to report after MSM and Fastenal, and they're still looking for a pretty big move, about 21 points. The issue is like with like this name now is that because they're third, I don't know how much uncertainty is left, and at 21 points, I mean it's definitely moved more than that in the past, but it also is the last one to report now, so I really don't have a lot of conviction with it one way or the other. Fastenal was okay, MSM wasn't very good, so don't really know what to expect. Options aren't cheap, so probably just going to be spectator for that. Also Monday is Halliburton. So this is pricing about 1.5 points, and it got hit on Schlumberger's report today. Even though Schlumberger actually the report seemed pretty solid. Charts are very similar. I'd say Schlumberger is probably the leader just in terms of chart, right, technical performance. So I'd prefer to stick with Schlumberger. I think the charts are very similar. I'm guessing the numbers will probably be very similar, but I'd prefer to stick with Schlumberger. So, it's interesting. It's interesting, but I'd rather go with the leader in this one. All right, after the close Monday, Whirlpool. So this is looking for about a 10-point move, and this was one of like the poster child names for tariffs last year. Remember, like this quarter, I talked about steel and aluminum, right? Um, It's obviously had a big move off its low, and last quarter had a really significant red to green reversal. Um, it still hasn't closed that gap from last year, and at 10 points, the options aren't cheap, but they're also not too bad in the context of what this has moved occasionally. I mean, like last quarter, top to bottom was over $20. So actually, it seems like it could be an interesting volatility candidate. Still has this huge gap above and it's well off its lows. Has a history of occasionally like 20+ point moves. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. That's Monday after the close. All right, Tuesday before the open, we have Lockheed. So this will be the first big defense name to go. And I think this is one of the more interesting setups. So it's going to be a really busy stretch for the defense names next week. So it's been a quiet couple months, but it's going to be a really busy stretch next week because it's Lockheed and then there's General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, and a whole bunch of them. Um, so this thing has been relatively range bound, right? Kind of pushing up into resistance. Been sideways around 300 basically since the beginning of February. Looking for about 10 points. That to me seems a little bit underpriced, and it seems like there's visibility for a bigger move. And after kind of like a sideways action, hasn't really done a whole lot. It seems like 10 points could, again, they could be a little bit underpriced. So I'm thinking strangle, straddle, something to take advantage of potentially options that are underpriced in potential on that one. Also Tuesday before the open, Twitter. This one looks pretty good, huh? So a very similar setup to where it was last quarter, right? So it's pushing right up into this 35, 36 resistance area. Last quarter, we know what happened. It was disappointing and got hit, but it's right back, and it's a nice tight consolidation right at it again. So if at first you don't succeed, try again, right? So seems like it wants to go higher. It's priced in 4 points. If positive, that would put it well into this gap, right? Just a really obvious gap above. The stock keeps rebounding off after getting hit. So maybe something slightly longer dated, right? Maybe not looking for immediate pop, but if it can if it can get up into this 36, 37, 38 area, then maybe it starts to grind into that gap. So maybe longer dated call spreads or maybe even like call fly. That was the trade from last quarter. Something looking for like more of like a prolonged run. Tuesday after the close, eBay. So pricing in like a little over two, so like 215. Um, Not a bad setup. Had a big run this year. Digested the gains. Last quarter was on the smaller side in terms of the movement, but that's because it had a big jump on the activist stake. Um, I, I feel like I feel like at a little over two is like 215. It's a little bit underpriced compared to what it averaged prior to this quarter, right? Because going back, you saw some moves in excess of 3.5. So options don't appear too bad. Plenty of room lower. Still got some room. Still got some area above too. You can see, so there's still some room back above if it really wants to go. So again, another one. Options aren't too bad. Might be worth it to take a shot on some sort of volatility strategy. Again, like strangle, straddle. Plenty. It seems like there's plenty of room lower, plenty of room higher, and options aren't really necessarily reflecting that. iRobot. All right, this one's on the expensive side in terms of options, priced in about 16 points, but this really could be a wild one. So it had a monstrous move in February after earnings, and then you can see it's like flagging above the previous 52-week high. Um, Very heavily shorted and has a history of some really big gaps. So I don't know what I would do with it, but this thing could really just be one of like the crazy ones next week. Just heavily shorted, all-time high, has a history of really wild moves, so it's definitely one to keep on your radar. Also Tuesday after the close, Snap, right? Snap is back. It's off a little bit today, but overall, I mean, just been a really nice grinder since it had a nice quarter back in February, right? So looking for about $1.75, and this seems like one of those more make or break prints here, right? Because finally has a little momentum, really starting to, the chart's really starting to improve, reclaiming a lot of levels that it had lost over the last year and a half. Um, I, as much as this stock has been a dog for a while, I feel like last quarter was solid. It's got a lot of momentum behind it, so it probably favor the bull side. Um, but maybe something on a longer expiration, right? Just because the stock has had a big move, and you might not see like another move the same magnitude, as fast, right? Expectations a little bit higher now. But it does seem as though if this number is good, then people might really start to get back on board this one. Wednesday before the bell, Boeing. So they're pricing in $20, and we actually talked about this during the coaching session on Monday, and I feel like this has a lot of similarities to UNH that reported this week. Obviously not business wise, but in the sense that Boeing and UNH at the moment aren't really driven by earnings and revenues, right? Like that's not the story moving the stocks around. I mean, UNH it's all about free Medicare, and then Boeing's obviously about the 737 MAX jets. So I mean, 20 is not too bad in the context of some of the moves we've seen over the last month, but at the same time, like I'm not sure that people really care that much about earnings and revenues at the moment, right? It's all about what's the update on the planes, right? So kind of a tough setup, and as much as I think it could move, I think that it might make more sense to me to just be on the sideline for this. Biogen also Wednesday morning. So looking for about 13 points on Biogen. So this is going to be the first biotech to report. Chart looks awful, right? We've been running this one as a short recently. Hasn't really been rewarded on decent quarters recently, right? So got beat up. Chart looks bad. Hasn't really been rewarded on earnings the last couple quarters. So I feel like this looks like it's set up for a retest of that March low, maybe even further if numbers actually disappoint this time around. Cat, another big name Wednesday morning. Pricing about 7 points, and as you can see, I mean, right at the top of of like a pennant that it's formed. Mm, see, so right through the top of the pennant. What's interesting about that is basically it had a really ugly quarter back in February. It was January, excuse me. I think got smashed after missing by a mile. And the stock is actually considerably higher than where it was even like going into that report right here, right? So it moved 13 last quarter. It moved 13 the quarter before that. Yet the options, for whatever reason, are only pricing in 7 this time around. So make of that what you will. To me, that seems like they're underpriced. 13 last quarter, 13 quarter before that. Interesting technical setup, and options are only about half of what it's moved recently. I mean, so long story short, I feel like some sort of volatility strategy probably makes sense. Just going off historical movement, recent historical moves and overall technical setup on this thing. All right, Wednesday after the close. So this is going to be a big night. All right, first off is Chipotle. Pricing at about $50, and I'll be honest. I have absolutely no clue what to expect with this. I mean, it had a monster move on earnings, and now it's had a monster move after earnings. Really hasn't been much of a pullback. I mean, just yesterday, yes, it dipped, but I mean, in general, it just really has not had a single pullback. Uh, it's actually within striking distance of the all-time high again, which is kind of crazy to think about because this was at like 250 at this time last year, right? So it's come almost all the way back, striking distance of all-time high. I don't know how else to look at this. It's saying that expectations are absurdly high and the stock is like ridiculously overheated. But I mean, it doesn't mean it can't go higher. Personally, I'd probably rather wait and see if there's a dip, and maybe try a long into like a dip. I just like a stock like this, like I just don't think I really have any interest in it. As much as I have a feeling it's probably going to be a mover, at $50 and a chart like this, I'd rather just wait. Facebook, another name Wednesday night. So pricing in about 11 points. Coming off a big beat pop. Stock has been strong coming into the July gap, right? So coming into the top of this gap. The issue with Facebook is that it seems like there's a lot of negative headlines, so that might weigh on the upside a little bit, right? Just it seems like every day there's some sort of negative headline on Facebook. I feel like the numbers should be solid. I mean, last quarter was very solid, so I feel like the numbers should be solid. Maybe it works its way higher slowly, like kind of like begrudgingly going up in the face of like these negative headlines. So could think maybe like a calendar spread or even like a fly, right? A call fly, maybe like try to take advantage of like the higher near-term implied volatility in favor of a longer-term position. So I'm thinking on Facebook. Microsoft also Wednesday after the close. So this is priced in about 4.5 points, and without question, this is easily the best FANG name. Stock looks great. It's been acting great. It's at a new 52-week high, and the only problem with that is that with this recent performance comes much higher expectations. And the thing with Microsoft is that it has a history of kind of lackluster moves, especially when it ramps into earnings like this. So to me, options seem expensive. Stock's had a huge run, and would probably think of doing something like last quarter, where no position into the report, see if there's a pullback, and try for like a swing, because that seems to be the MO for this, right? Get the dip, get into the dip, and then look for like a rebound. So that's what I'm thinking of Microsoft. ServiceNow. So we caught this one really nicely last quarter and had this huge breakout. It's priced in 17.5 this time around, but this setup honestly is much different. It's up a ton in the last couple of months. Expectations are way higher. Software stocks, just kind of in general, have been struggling to make new highs recently, right? Just as a group, so they seem kind of tired. Probably would rather wait for a pullback, right? This is worked on some of these recently. You wait for a pullback into like trend line support or moving average support and look for like a rebound after the results. So that's what I'm thinking of NOW. Also Wednesday, another big one, Tesla, right? 25 points is what's priced in, and I personally hate this stock, but the recent weak action has put it into a kind of interesting area, right? I mean, it's hanging just above that huge 250 support level, which is now within the price to move, right? It's at 274. It's priced in at 25 points, so that would put it right at 250 if bad. Maybe look at like a speculative out of the money bearish bet, right? Because just in case it's bad and it breaks 250, I mean, there could be a ton of downside, right? You can see how critical that 250 level has been. So that's what I'm thinking on Tesla. Otherwise, I don't know if I'm gonna do anything with it. He's another big name. Looks fantastic. It's priced in 5 points. Just very steady action. Last quarter was solid. So thinking upside, maybe you get like that blow off move, right? Like just a very steady grind higher. Maybe if the numbers are good, you see like that blow off pop, kind of something similar to what Honeywell did, right? Just grind, 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 blow off pop. Maybe you get a similar move on Visa, grind, 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 blow off pop. So it's priced in at 5 points though. Also, another big name. Told you Wednesday's a big day. Xilinx. So this was priced in at 10.5 points. This was one of the best performers last quarter, and it hasn't given up any of that momentum. It's going to be just about at its 52-week high going into this quarter. Problem with that, again, expectations are way, way, way higher than they were last time around. I feel like the numbers are going to be a blowout. Well, I feel like after last quarter's blowout, the numbers are probably going to be really good, but I would probably be thinking more marginal upside. I mean, nothing in the magnitude of like the 20 you saw last quarter. It seems like that'd be a stretch. So, maybe look again something for, a pullback after the print or some sort of like tighter call spread. I feel like expecting the same type of move again on this name is a little bit unrealistic. So I feel like the numbers are gonna be good, but I'm not sure what the upside is from these levels. Okay, Thursday before the open, you have a few pharma bio names. So you have Bristol Myers. I'm gonna kind of lump these together. Bristol Myers, Alexion, and AbbVie. Okay, all three of those actually tend to move pretty well when they report. Bristol Myers looks the worst. Well, AbbVie looks pretty bad. Actually, AbbVie and Bristol Myers pretty bad. Alexion, up until the last 2 days, was probably the best. Personally, these are going to be kind of wait and see. And I'll see how the first couple days next week go. Just because it's hard again, kind of like UNH, right? Like when stocks are reacting to the headlines outside of earnings and revenues, it's kind of hard to lay out the money for earnings, for these earnings reports because you just don't know if traders really care, right? So like Alexion didn't get dumped yesterday because people are worried about what they're going to report this quarter. They got dumped yesterday because bios got run over because everybody's worried about the future healthcare landscape, right? So that's why I'm saying it's kind of wait and see. These are some of the bigger names. They have a history of moving, so I mean they're definitely interesting, but I kind of want to wait and see what the overall action's like before necessarily doing anything with them. 3M, big industrial. They're looking for about 7.5 on this one. You can see that it's pushing up to the top of this kind of key of resistance. This was a very consistent mover for a long stretch, but recent quarter was a little bit quieter. To be honest, the numbers have not been great on this stock for the last year, but it tends to recover bad reports very, very quickly, right? So here, bad report, recovered quickly. Here, bad report, recovered quickly, right? So it has this history of just like snapping back really fast. So it seems like people are interested to be in this name. So maybe look at something bullish this time, right? Even though the last couple quarters haven't been great, because if they finally put together a decent print, it seems like there could be some technical upside on a breakout. UPS, big transport report. Overall, it doesn't seem too interesting to me, to be honest. It's one of the big transports, obviously, but the chart doesn't really seem too interesting. It's been in a tight range. Had a decent report back in February, right here. Seems like there's visibility maybe for like 5 to 6 points either way, but options are pricing in 5.25. So it seems like they kind of like price out the potential on this thing. So probably just be a spectator there. After the close Thursday, the biggie, Amazon. So looking for about $82, give or take, 80 to 82 in that ballpark. Um, Point wise, probably the biggest potential mover. Maybe Chipotle could maybe it could upstage Amazon, but point wise, it's definitely the biggest price to move. Hanging right above the top of like this resistance area, right? And it looks like it wants higher prices. The problem is it's finished red the day of its results the last 3 quarters in a row. So that's not like a very great, that's not a great history or recent history at least. It does seem though if they beat, it has a clear path to 2,000. I mean, there's really nothing in the way. And at 82 points, even though the options are obviously expensive, they're actually not too pricey compared to some of the moves this has had just in the last like 2, 3, 4 quarters. So yes, the options are expensive, but they're not expensive compared to what it's moved. So um, I feel like bullish is probably the way to go here. The way for me to do it though, it would have to be like spreads or flies just to get the risk down in line with like the overall risk that I trade on these types of catalyst trades. So it would have to be some sort of spreads or flies, maybe a combination, um, something along those lines. But that's what I'm thinking. But it does appear to lean bullish. Grubhub, another potential big mover after the close on Thursday. So looking for about 9 points. We played this one last quarter here. Worked pretty well. Had a huge gap down, but then a really quick reversal. You can see though that just been steady sliding since then, and it's actually below that level now. Action's very weak. Stock looks like it's setting up for a huge breakdown here. All right, coming off a bad quarter. The expensive growth stock coming off a bad quarter. Chart looks weak. Price action's been weak. It seems like if anything, you're probably looking for maybe like a move down into like the mid 50s, right? Down here, mid to low 50s. Got another gap underneath it. Right, that's what I was looking at. You can see like price action week seems like it'd be setting up for like a massive breakdown. So put spread, maybe just straight puts, something like the mid to low 50s. Maybe the target on that. Intel. So this is actually I feel like one of the more interesting names next week. I mean, it's not under the radar because it's Intel, but um, it's interesting because the options price, which are 2.5, and also like the recent performance. So, so first off, it's priced in again 2.5. It's at a 52-week high after missing. So after pretty bad report last quarter, right? The CEO hire that basically nobody wanted, and now the stock is at a 52-week high. So it's up a ton since a bad report, and no, I was here. Excuse me. So it's up a ton since a bad report. Pricing at 2.5. Yet last quarter it moved 4. So it's up a ton in a short period. Has a gap, a gap underneath it. It moved 4 last quarter. It seems like the stock has like maybe like another 3 to 4 point visibility in it, one way or the other. So options 2.5. It seems like there's room there. So straddle some sort of volatility strategy. That's what I've been thinking on Intel. Illumina, it's a big healthcare name. So it's priced in 19. Again, kind of like Alexion, AbbVie, and Bristol Myers. And we're watching what the healthcare reports look like earlier in the week to kind of get a clue for this. Overall, though, I like the bullish scenario in this, or the bullish setup. Looks like a little bit of a rounded bottom. Numbers have been pretty spectacular recently, and this to me could have some serious upside, but it's really going to depend on how the sector fares the beginning portion of next week. Starbucks. This has been a beauty, huh? So this is just been an amazing run, kind of like CMG. The pricing in $3. Again, like CMG, 52-week high. Hasn't really had any material pullback. Looks like it wants to go higher, but expectations were probably pretty lofty at this point. Calendar spread, or maybe just sit it out and maybe look for a quick dip for a swing trade, right? Just to get involved. But I mean, just super steady action to the highs. Numbers have been good, so I'd be looking for some sort of bullish strategy. But honestly, it might be I have to wait until after the report to get involved. Okay, before the open Friday, two big energy names. So Chevron, which made a big splash last week, right, with the Anadarko acquisition. So that's pricing in three, and then Exxon is pricing in just about two. So Chevron might not be a huge earnings story this time around just because of the recent deal, right? Exxon, on the other hand, seems pretty interesting. 2 points. It moves more than that last quarter, right? So it moved about three and change last quarter. Uh, just at the top of resistance right here. Seems like there could be some upside coming off a good quarter. Oil's been up, so definitely thinking bullish on this. Probably the more interesting of the two, just because Chevron has like that Anadarko deal, as kind of moving things around at the moment. 2 points. Maybe that even comes down a little bit, if the stock stays range bound the next few days. So that could be interesting. Maybe like a longer term upside call bet, call spread, something along those lines. All right. So lots to look forward to. I mean, you can see. I mean, I just blew through like 20 names there. All could potentially have some big moves. And there's another 50 that I didn't even get to. So just a lot going on next week. So buckle up. All right. Um, Hope you guys have a fantastic long weekend. Enjoy the day off tomorrow. Rest up, relax, spend time with family. If you are traveling this weekend, have safe travels, and just come back ready to get after it next week. Because again, just a ton of news, a ton of names reporting, and there's going to be a lot of action. So um, I'm excited. All right. So again, have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you guys all on Monday.